The Nutcracker Suite, according to Walt Disney in the 1940 animated classic Fantasia, which is back in release with a controversial new soundtrack, and we'll be reviewing it this week on Sneak Previews. And across the aisle from me is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune. And Gene, I notice your shoes don't match today.
Well, that's putting it mildly. I'm wearing a cast on this foot. I hurt my ankle playing tennis in Mexico.
Did you make the shot?
I don't remember. I was just screaming, "It's broke, it's broke."
Okay, well, who am I?
Okay, you're Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. In addition to Fantasia, we'll also be reviewing the Kirlean Witness, in which one of the witnesses is a plant. And Diva, a French thriller set in the opera world, a film that many critics are calling one of the finest first films by a new director in years, and I think so too. But first, Roger begins with Circle of Deceit, a new West German film.
Circle of Deceit tells the story of a West German journalist who goes on assignment to the war-shattered city of Beirut, Lebanon, and uses the violence in that city as a catharsis to rid himself of his own inner demons. When he first gets to Lebanon, he's a man out of touch with his feelings, a man who no longer believes in anything or cares about anyone. But once he becomes a resident of a city where human life has been incredibly cheapened, he begins to take his own life more seriously. And in this scene, the journalist, played by the leading German actor Bruno Ganz, enters the wheeler-dealer world of Lebanese journalism, bargaining for photographs of a massacre.
Une fois que j'ai vu ces photos, j'ai failli m'évanouir, mais que voulez-vous? Si on veut être réaliste, hein, il faut regarder les choses en face. Surtout quand on fait votre métier. On le tient par les cheveux, il va l'entraîner. Pas la peine de dire ce qui va se passer derrière. Quand on sait que, pour une jeune musulmane, le viol, c'est pire que la mort ou que la torture.
Combien vous en voulez?
3000. Mais n'hésitez pas, ces horreurs vont faire frissonner dans les chaumières. Des images sales à regarder dans des endroits propres, quand les gens ont besoin de ça pour mieux savourer leur bonheur.
3000.
3000.
Combien?
Monsieur m'en offre 3000.
3,5. 4. 4,5. 5.
Et une offre à 5000. Vous voulez que je fasse le partage?
I need the one of the brake and the one with the fellow behind the car.
En exclusivité?
Oui, pour le Scandinavie.
Ah non, 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 vous me dépouillez de ce que j'ai de meilleur. Non, non, ça, je ne marche pas.
Alors 6, pour tout le paquet.
6 une fois, 6 deux fois, 6 trois fois. Adjugé, pour la première fois, le marque allemand a été battu.
Congratulations.
Life and death reduced to a cynical auction. Violence is all around these visitors to Beirut. Street battles are part of their daily routine, and the bodies of dead victims have become a commonplace. In the middle of the carnage, the journalist begins an affair with a German woman who lives in Beirut. She's the widow of an Arab killed in the fighting. She's remained behind, almost oblivious to the war. The main thing she wants in life is a baby of her own, and in a nation overflowing with war orphans, she goes with her lover to an orphanage where adoption has been reduced to a cynical routine.
Toutefois, je tiens à vous dire que si au bout d'un certain temps l'enfant ne vous convenait plus, en aucun cas il ne serait repris ou échangé. Mais il a reçu le Saint-Sacrement du baptême. Oui, nous avons fait le nécessaire. Et c'est getauft. À quelle somme avez-vous pensé? C'est un don laissé à votre discrétion. Le couvent en a réellement besoin. 1000? 2000? 2000, ça me paraît beaucoup. Moi, je ne trouve pas.
That was Hanna Schagula as the woman adopting the baby. She's probably the best actress in West German movies right now, and you might remember her from The Marriage of Maria Braun. In Circle of Deceit, she and Bruno Ganz create a small and threatened island of furtive romance in the middle of a city gone mad. Circle of Deceit was directed by Volker Schlondorf, who made last year's Academy Award-winning Best Foreign Film, The Tin Drum. Both films are about the mindlessness and dispassionate violence of war, but Circle of Deceit is the better film, I think, because it deals with specific people and their specific problems instead of turning them into symbols of universal despair. This is a really good film.
I think it is too, and you know, it makes me rethink something I said about another film a few weeks ago, the film Missing with Sissy Spacek,
yeah, which you
and
like
Jack
more
Lemmon.
than I did.
Yes, and I praised that film for its portrait of a city in turmoil with bombs going off, tanks in the street. That was good. This is better, and it's better, obviously better. I think that what this does, again, you know, we see these things on television news all the time, and somehow they are different. They're that little screen in the back of the anchor man. When you get involved in these characters, you're right. The specific characters here take us through these problems.
And they also take us through the streets of the city.
We cannot have, you cannot hold on. Good and evil is a luxury in these situations.
One of the remarkable things about this film is that it was shot on location in Beirut, and you see in the background at the large screen, you see shooting going on, explosions, people being killed. The temptation is to think that they're shooting on location while actual battles are taking place. Then when you find out that the battles were staged, it's even more remarkable to think how dangerous it would be to stage battles in a city like Beirut with all of that stuff going on.
I have one problem with the movie. I think its ending is a little pat. And I think it's sort of predictable what happens to the guy and he has a change of heart. And I think that the movie in
that's
itself...
a very minor criticism.
I think it trivializes, I think, all that's gone on before. But on balance, I think it's a fine film.
Okay, fine.
Our next film, Kirlean Witness, has a terrific premise, but sad to say, I think not much more. It's a murder mystery, and I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's a case where one of the witnesses is a plant. A house plant. The entire movie is built on the premise that people can communicate with plants, that plants have feelings too. The story goes like this. A young woman in New York is found dead on a rooftop, and her sister suspects a carpenter friend. But both the dead sister and the carpenter believe in the capacity of plants to communicate with people. But the surviving sister has her doubts. She asks the carpenter to come over to do a job for her, and she hooks up a plant that was on the roof when her sister was killed to a sensor graph. Yes, she's skeptical about plant communication, but she's curious.
You ever get afraid living around here?
No.
You know, what gets me now is how this area has changed. Used to be just the guys in the corner and the warehouses and the trucks, but now with these boutiques. You know, I didn't even know what a boutique was until I first came here. Boutiques, art galleries, people living here. I remember when this place used to be a chicken slaughterhouse. Channeling on the floor and all. Right over there is where the blood used to run off into the drain. Yeah. You ever meditate? Your sister used to meditate. In fact, we used to meditate together with the plants. I always wondered what you thought about me. That's the awful thing, you know. You never know what people are thinking about you. Yep. I'll go back to work.
She's wired up that plant to see how the plant reacts to him. And if the plant freaks out, the doll freaks out, danger. This may be the guy who killed her sister. The success of this movie depends directly, I think, on how willingly we are going to go along with this film's premise about plant communication. If you're already sold on it, I suppose the film might work quite well. If you run a plant store, this is your movie. You must see it immediately. But I found myself looking at the plant being wired up for what amounts to be a lie detector test, and I was neither amused or enthralled. I just saw it as sort of a trendy bit of silliness. Kirlean Witness isn't a bad movie, not by any means. It's just one that I think is a little thin.
I liked it more than you did. I think when you call it a trendy bit of silliness, you may be kind of right, though. It's kind of loony, kind of goofy, and kind of engaging, I thought. It's kind of, you know, when you read New York Magazine, every week it's kind of like a survival manual, how to make it in the city, and it has, you know, holistic medicine, natural foods, vitamins, security systems, locks on your door, you know, how you can make it through life.
Team that can
well,
save your life.
this is the ultimate conclusion, I guess, which is that you wire up your plants to lie detectors to see if the people in your house can be trusted. It's just, it's kind of urban paranoia taken to its ultimate extreme, and I thought it was fun on that basis.
All right, well, I'm just sitting there and thinking, well, they really only have one gimmick here going, and every time we get the plant, and I just wanted to see the story move a little bit more, to see the plants maybe turn on somebody or something. I don't know.
The performances are good. The direction by Jonathan Sarno is good. I think it's a well-made film, but goofy. You're right, silly.
Okay.
Okay, next movie is, I guess it doesn't have Goofy in it, but it does have Mickey Mouse in it, speaking of Goofy. One of the most reliable annuities in Hollywood is the Disney Studios' backlist of animated cartoon classics. Movies like Pinocchio and Snow White are re-released every 7 years for a new generation of family audiences. But there's one Disney classic that stands outside that pattern. It's Fantasia, the experimental, daring 1940 film in which Walt Disney took famous pieces of classical music and combined them with a fantastical array of animated images. This movie was wildly experimental in 1940, and it's still fresh and exciting today. Here's the movie's most famous sequence. It stars Mickey Mouse as the Sorcerer's Apprentice. An inspired piece of film. I think one of the problems with it, though, is I've never been able to listen to The Sorcerer's Apprentice after seeing Fantasia without thinking of Mickey Mouse. I don't know if you could hear anything different in the music with that scene, but a lot was different. Fantasia's original 1940 soundtrack was conducted by Leopold Stokowski in what was then a revolutionary stereo system, and Disney was going to put speakers in the theaters. The sound was years ahead of its time in 1940, but the soundtrack took a battering over the years from repeated re-releases. In the meantime, advances were made in digital recording and the Dolby noise reduction system. So, for this new, current national release of Fantasia, Disney has completely re-recorded the entire soundtrack with Hollywood conductor-arranger Irwin Kostal leading an orchestra of studio musicians who are using Stokowski's original arrangements and a few changes. Well, does the music sound better this time? It's hard to be objective about it. Both versions sound good to me. I heard the other version about 7 years ago, and as far as I can remember, they were both good. But the point in Fantasia is still its incredible images, bursting with imagination and fancy. What do you think, Gene? How did it sound to you?
Well, I must say that there are parts of it that I love. I mean, I'll go right to the imagery, too. I mean, that is the best part of Fantasia. It's a brilliant piece of animation. There's another part with Beethoven's Sixth Afternoon with Fawn, which I think is pretty lousy animation, and I think that the music there sounded poorly performed, I must say. Of course, I'm looking for it now because I know about the changes. You don't tell me that there's been changes, I probably wouldn't pick it up. It didn't sound very good. I have a whole set of reactions to Fantasia. I don't think it's the perfect film, as I say. I think there's some parts of it hits and miss. That is a very special thing. And then The Night on Bald Mountain is another beautiful thing toward the end.
Of course, Disney's whole purpose in this film was to give us, he told us, well, music tells a story. Well, we know that music doesn't tell a story. Music is totally abstract until you're told what the story is.
Right.
And that's what Disney is doing. He's trying to popularize it for kids. This is classical music. Here's Mickey Mouse.
All right, now here's the challenge, and we like this film, and it's easy to say you like it. Do you think this will stimulate interest in music, this film?
No.
I don't either.
I saw it when I was a kid, and I loved it for its images.
Absolutely.
Later on, when I got into classical music, I thought, gee, I've heard this somewhere before. I wonder where. Well, it was Fantasia.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the one that's going to send kids to buying the classical records, no.
No, but it's a lot of fun, even if it's not good for you.
Okay. One of our great pleasures of a job like ours is the all-too-rare experience of coming across a movie like our next one, Diva. Diva is a French thriller, the first movie by a director named Jean-Jacques Benex, and this is a most auspicious debut because Diva is a knockout, a wonderfully stylish celebration of music and the love of music. Diva tells the story of a young Frenchman who is absolutely enthralled with the voice of an American opera singer who is refused on principle to permit her voice to be recorded. She believes music should only be experienced live and that it cannot be captured on plastic. But this young man, who is quite a thing for this opera singer, is determined to make his own tape recording of her voice, and he does so at a public performance. Now, seated behind him are a couple of sinister villains, two Japanese businessmen who are also interested in the recording. That was performed by Wilhelmina Wiggins Fernandez. And what follows next is a huge tape chase all over Paris, with the young man being pursued by a wild assortment of killers who want his tape. And as Roger mentioned on a show a couple of months ago, I too am fairly tired of chase scenes in the movie, but this one in Diva snapped me to attention. fabulous. Now, Roger,
Amazing.
fill in the blanks.
Okay.
Bullet, French Connection.
Diva.
That's the way I think.
Three greatest chase scenes. And
Well,
the General, Buster Keaton.
In the last few
Okay,
minutes.
fine.
It's obvious that Diva is a lot of fun, and from that first scene, you can see that its love of music is really apparent. I love the idea of someone who doesn't want to be recorded. But in addition to all of that, Diva, like all fine movies, also celebrates movie making. And in fact, if there's anything wrong with this wonderful film, it may be that it contains a few too many artful camera moves in a rear view mirror of a car. I think that's when I thought maybe they're going a little too much. But that's a minor quibble. And Diva is one exceptionally entertaining motion picture.
I'm in total agreement with you. This movie was a joy to watch. It was a joy to see, and I can't wait to see it again. And I'll tell you, I don't care what it's about. I mean, the basic plot, which is that the hero is in possession of information that he doesn't know that he has, so that he doesn't know what danger he's in. That could be right out of Hitchcock. It's been used before. It doesn't matter. Here, it's simply a premise to hang the movie making from. And this guy, Jean-Jacques Benex, is such a natural movie maker. I guess he's only about 32 years old. He's been an assistant director for 10 years. His camera plunges right into Paris. It lives there. It exists there. His people move through all these fantastic locations. I guess I sound a little excited. Diva is a great movie.
Well, this is what happens when we see these things. You caught it by surprise, I guess, at the Toronto Film Festival last year. I just happened on this thing. You had told me that it might be pretty good. I went in there. I was surprised. I was surprised to see it. It throws in that chase as a bonus. There's a relationship between the young man and the singer that's wonderful and leisurely. They don't just cut quickly. They have time in this chase film, if you will, for a relationship.
For several relationships. There's also another one between the young man and an older man who's kind of an overseer, a godfather of Paris, if you will. And the little human moments, the moments of insight, the eccentricities, the fact that he wears a snorkel and goggles in order to cut onions at the sink is all part of this amazing picture.
Well, yes, it's Sparky the Wonder Dog. Time for Dog of the Week, the week's worst movies, but something unusual this week. Roger and I have found the same dog. We both saw a movie this week that was so bad and so heavily advertised that we were establishing a new honor this week, the very, very bad dog of the week. And The Beast Within certainly qualifies.
Just sort of a sneak preview's public service.
Okay.
The Beast Within is one of those movies that begins on a dark night many long years ago when a car with two newlyweds runs off the road and into a dismal swamp, and the bridegroom goes into town for help, while his innocent young bride follows their runaway dog into the darkness where something waits to attack her, and then, 17 years later, seems to be something not quite human about her son. You could almost say that something's eating him. He's a good boy, does his lessons, but he's tortured by an unspeakable inner nature that he dreams about in a hospital bed.
You're leaving.
No, sweetheart.
Yes, you are. Yes, you're leaving me.
I'm just going with Daddy for a little while. Just where we think we can do you best. We'll be right back, darling. We'll be right here.
But I'm afraid. I'm dying. I don't want to be left alone.
Nobody, Daddy, Dr. Odom, or me is ever going to let that happen to you.
Soon we get the basic horror movie transformation scene in which an innocent teenager turns into a savage monster.
I really tried to stop him.
Well, let's face it, this movie exists as an excuse for the last 15 or 20 minutes, which are devoted to endless special effects shots showing a human turning into a beast. The kid is kind of a monstrous locust, I guess, and after he sheds his skin, everybody finally realizes that it's a little late to keep the family secret of that dreadful honeymoon night in the swamp 17 years ago. And then the movie turns into a shameless showdown between the gruesome and the corny.
And mostly the gruesome, because, you know, I think here's a case where technology just gets in the way of common sense. They have figured out, the special makeup effects people, that they can pump up skin, right?
Yeah.
So we get, in this movie, lots of pumped up skin, and you get gross things that are ugly. I mean, you and I have seen more slashings, murders than anybody on Earth.
The Howling,
Scanners,
American Werewolf in London,
Scanners. Lots of stuff. We see this all the time. This objectively grossed me out. It was ugly and sickening.
And also, because they paid for this technology, they didn't have the sense to only show a little of it. The camera stays on this guy's face. It's like screen tests for a pumped
together
up
the
face.
title, The Beast Within, right?
You got it.
All right. So much for the dogs. Now let's recap our reactions to the main movies on this show. Roger and I both admire Volker Schlondorff's Circle of Deceit, a portrait of a questioning journalist in Lebanon who begins questioning himself. 2 yes votes for that. We split on The Kirlean Witness. Roger found it an amusing treatment of an intriguing premise. I only like the premise, not the treatment. And we agree on recommending the revival of Walt Disney's Fantasia, although I had some reservations about the soundtrack, and I'm not the biggest fan of some segments of the movie. And finally, we are in complete agreement on the worth of Diva, the stylish French opera thriller directed by Jean-Jacques Benex. It's one of the year's best movies.
To which I say, amen.
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 All right.
Okay, bravo.
Okay,
I
that's
agree.
a little bit
Great
better.
movie, Diva. Okay, that's all for this week. Join us next time when we'll take a look at 4 new movies, including Death Wish 2, with Charles Bronson as an urban vigilante once again, and The Sword and the Sorcerer, an action-adventure movie. Until then, we'll see you at the movies.
Funding for sneak previews was provided by this station and by other public television stations.